Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live question and answers webinar training with Bo Manry and Chris Goff. Now, my name is Bo Manry, and we're going to have a great night tonight. We'll be taking live questions after we answer those questions that were sent in by our REIPro members. So go ahead and open up that Q&A box located on your toolbar so that you're ready to type in any questions you have. Also, thank you for all of the emails this past week raving about how these trainings are helping you in your real estate business. We do this almost every week for our REI Pro members, and we are committed to helping you achieve your goals. So tonight, I am joined by my business partner, Chris Goff. Welcome, Chris.
Hey everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. And I know you're going to learn a lot tonight. One thing I do want to mention is that I'm releasing our last and finally, right? Final episode of our wholesaling training tomorrow. So definitely keep an eye out for an email, check your dashboard, and all that good stuff. If you haven't watched it, you definitely need to go to the education link at the top of your dashboard because it's going to help you understand how to flip houses without using any of your money or credit. And remember, this training is included for free with your REI Pro membership. So you definitely want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and for tonight, we left the webinar open. So for those of you that are not familiar with REI Pro, we want to take just a couple of minutes to tell you what it is and how you can get started for free.
Absolutely. There's a lot to talk about and with this, but REI Pro real estate investing, I like to say software and educational tool. It's going to be the quickest and easiest way to close your first deal and stay in the forefront of the industry. Just imagine having a complete system of tools and education that's going to make even the beginner investor make a six-figure income. Now, this isn't the time, especially the time that we're in, to take and do it the wrong way. So our team wants to help you build an unstoppable business. Just check out our reviews page on our website. And these are real people making real money in today's market, and they're doing it the right way. So start a free trial by going to www.myreipro.com. And we have 3 different plans you can choose from. You can cancel anytime. You really have nothing to lose. So go check it out.
Yep, now here's Jonathan, $5,000 profit. Samuel Douglas, $11,000 profit. And Roy Turner, $134,000 profit. Like Chris said, these are real people doing real deals today.
Yeah, and these are just a few people, and we could highlight so many people out there using the system. And I think it's all about, why are you in real estate to begin with? You're going to need education, you're going to need a tool. And we like to just take them both, combine them, and it's there to help you. It's help you get through the struggles that I went through when I got started, when I didn't have any help and I didn't have any tools because there were no tools.
And hopefully
So
avoid some of those pitfalls, right? And help fast track this thing.
that's the whole point. So I'm ready to get started, Bo. So
All
let's
right, let's
jump
get
right into
started.
it.
All right, so the first question from Hannah Paul. I have a house under contract for 18,000. I have an offer for 29,000 and the ARV is 75,000. Should I use a double close? How do I explain the 11,000? The buyer is aware that I'm selling my contract to purchase.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Hannah. Number one, not a bad deal here. Make $11,000. Um, you know, so I have general rules of thumb when you should do a double close and when you should not. We're actually going to be talking about it in our episode tomorrow in a little bit more detail. But I think you have to ask yourself a question, and that is, do you know the investor that well? And is it going to be a big deal to that investor if they've already agreed to purchase this property for 29,000? I mean, and they haven't asked how much you have it under contract for, they may not care. Now, with that being said, if it's somebody you don't know, maybe this is the first deal, you don't want anything to go wrong, then you might want to consider a double close. But I think in this case, I would just kind of act like it's no big deal. I mean, if he's willing to pay or she's willing to pay $29,000 for the house, they've already have it in their mind. Hey, if I buy it for this, I'm going to profit X dollar amount. It shouldn't matter how much money you make on the deal if they are going to make money on the deal as well. So um, I would just go with the flow on this one and just do an assignment. It's obviously the easiest way to do it. You'll save a little bit of money doing it that way. Um, if you feel that they're going to harp on you and not close the deal because of it, that would be the only reason I would do a double close. So that was
All
it.
right. Next question from Brad Ennis. Hey guys, at what point in the process does the documentation for the seller finance agreement get produced? I presume this is after the purchase agreement is signed and sent to the attorney. In my experience thus far, which isn't much, sellers want to see that documentation before signing the purchase agreement. I want to get a better understanding of exactly when this is created and becomes available so that I can better explain the process to the seller. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Brad. And there's two ways to present this. Okay. So um, let me give you both because this is really a good question for everybody, actually. And those of you that um, not sure what we're talking about with the seller finance, just hang in there. But the very first way is if you think time is of the essence, like you feel maybe the seller's just going to sell to somebody else, I would use that one-page contract, the contract to purchase in step 5 in REIPro, and then I would add an addendum to that, which is going to specify the terms of the agreement so you could hurry up and quickly get it under contract. Then, of course, you would go back, have the attorney draw things up in a more professional and laid out approach. Now, I wouldn't say that that's normal. I would say what's normal is when, which is the second way of presenting it, is most sellers, at least from my experience, when they agree on a price, terms, what you're doing, they're not going to go around your back. They're not going to go and just start trying to talk to somebody else. Usually when somebody gives you a verbal agreement, it's pretty good. Okay? But if you feel that it's not good, that's where you would want to do the single page, but have your attorney draw it up. It may take a couple of days to, get the attorney to draw up all the paperwork, but I want you to think about when they draw the paperwork up, it has all the stuff that needs to be in there, such as what happens if you make a late payment? What's the foreclosure process? You know, you, that's what an attorney really needs to put in the real deal. Okay. But those of you that just want to hurry up and get a house under contract because maybe there's 10 other investors looking at it, try to get away with just that one page and just let the seller know, hey, I'm going to have my attorney draw up everything. I just wanted to secure the deal with this agreement. But I wouldn't say that that's pretty normal. So I would go the second round and just say, hey, great, my attorney's going to draw up everything. I should have it to you in a couple of days. We could sit down, sign, and let's move forward with the deal. So think of it that way. There's two ways to present it. I think the second way is going to be more common.
Perfect. All right. So next question is from Tam Brown. How do you find buyers? Thanks, Tam. This question, when I read it, was a little bit generic because it really depends on if you already have the property under contract or not. If you have the property under contract, then you already know what type of buyer that you're looking for. And so I thought I'd take a minute or two and explain several ways that you could go about finding buyers. But first, I want to address something that we get this question actually a lot, especially when we're out on the road doing these live events. And when I first got started, I was always worried about the buyer. You should always be building a buyer's list, but I was afraid that what would happen if I got a house under contract and then I'm not able to find a buyer. And the truth is there's just tons of buyers out there. You just can't see them like you see all the houses for sale. Houses for sale have signs in the yard. Maybe they're posted on Zillow or the MLS and you see all of that. You just don't see the buyers. So I can tell you that if you buy the house right, you're not going to have trouble finding a buyer. And in fact, like for lease option deals, one of my longest times for getting a buyer in a lease option deal was about 2 weeks. And I've never had trouble getting a buyer for a lease option deal or any of these other deals. Now, this is why we always tell our students to spend 90% of their time looking for houses, because you got to buy them at the right price and the right strategy. Okay. Now, all that being said, let's talk about how we can go about finding some buyers. I'm going to list a few ways here, and some of them depend on whether you have a deal under contract, and some of them do not. So let's assume that for a minute you have a house under contract, and maybe your target audience here, your target buyer is an investor. Now, you could use direct mail. You could build a list in REIPro using the cash buyers list, for example, and then you could send them a flyer, a letter, a postcard, something with the pictures on the house on it. And you could also take this ad and post it on Craigslist, Zillow, the MLS. And yes, you can list houses on the MLS without a realtor, give away that 6 or 7%. I've done it for a couple $100 up to a 0.5%, and then all the calls come directly to me. If you're targeting a qualified buyer or a lease option buyer, definitely use a yard sign. You can use something as simple as a for sale by owner sign, but I would recommend going and getting a professional sign with your business name and your logo on it. To me, it looks just a lot more professional. But regardless of the buyer type, you can also run ads on Facebook, Google Ads, any of your other social media sites, other places. Now, I don't use these two really as much anymore for me, but you could still use the newspaper or any of these local shop and save guides. Let's see, another tip that I wanted to point out is print a flyer up of this property with pictures on it and place it in the local grocery store's cork board. I know here locally in the Kroger, they have a cork board. A lot of people put for sale items on there, and I do see houses up there. So check on that. That's kind of a unique way to get the message out. And another unique way that we've done it is we've taken these same flyers and put them in teachers' lounges at the local school systems. That's kind of one maybe you really hadn't thought of or heard of, but we definitely found a buyer that way one time. Okay, so now let's not also forget about our own websites and our own social media sites. So if you have a website and you have a properties page, definitely put it out there and drive traffic to it using ads, Facebook, Google, Instagram, and even your direct mail. You can funnel them all back into that specific property. But when you do that, make sure you have a form on there so that someone can fill it out, get more information about it. And then on Facebook, take advantage of things like the Messenger app, prompt people to message you and start that dialogue, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do when we're marketing for these buyers. Now, if we're talking about just general houses, not necessarily under contract, all the same stuff still applies. You can still build the cash buyers list, send the direct mail to investors, do stuff on your website, run ads on social media. All that stuff is the same. Just make sure you're targeting the right type of buyer that you're looking for, or I should say a buyer specific situation, and make sure that you're getting the information or getting them to the web page that's going to answer that question. Again, utilizing all of our social media sites. Now, one of the great things that all of the REIPro members have, okay, is something we have in step 7, and it's our ad builder. It's something that I see a lot of people struggle with. It's great that we have these avenues to put this marketing material out there, but a lot of people struggle with, how do I write this ad? And I think it's one of the coolest features of REIPro. So I thought I'd take the opportunity real quick to show you how you could write an ad using this ad builder, and then you can take that ad and put it out in any number of these places and these techniques that I just got through mentioning. So I'm going to share a different screen here with you real quick. And I'm going to jump into REIPro, and I've got a property here pulled up. This is one of the properties that we actually rehabbed. And if you go to step 7, you will see here it says marketing buyers. Click on it. We go into the ad builder, and depending on the type of investor, or I'm sorry, the buyer that you're going for, it could be an investor, a qualified buyer, a lease option buyer, seller finance. You simply just choose that type of buyer that you want to target. And then you have these little simple drop down boxes. So maybe you have a headline like a lovely starter home, or a property type single family home. You can choose up to 4 features, 3 benefits, and you just go through and fill out these little boxes, hit save, hit print, and it's going to generate an ad that will help you guys out there. So real quickly, by just clicking a couple of things, here's what I got on my lease option ad. Rent to own this lovely starter home Enjoy life in this 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single-family home, conveniently located in Peachtree City, Georgia. You'll love the granite countertops, fenced-in backyard, big closets, tile floors that this home has to offer with easy highway access, convenience to shopping, and close school proximity. You'll finally have more time to focus on the things that matter most to you. Easy lease option terms, including low down payment and $1,500 a month. So hurry. Great opportunities like this don't come along every day. Call now to schedule a personal tour of your new home sweet home. And I wanted to show you that because a ton of people just struggle with writing ads, and you guys have this at your fingertips. It's going to make you sound professional. Take that ad and go put it in all those other places that I just mentioned as far as building your buyers list. All right, let me switch back.
Yeah, and you can actually email any buyers you have saved to REIPro from that screen as well.
That's
So,
right.
I always said, Bo, that it's something we teach. We're actually going to be coming out with our new revised explosive marketing strategy series, and what we talk about in this particular series is that it's not always where you market your business or market for buyers, market for properties. It's what you say in the marketing that actually gets the results. And I think that to me is one of the biggest missing pieces in this industry. Everyone will tell you, hey, just go put an ad here, place it here. Yeah, but what are you putting? You could just write the crappiest stuff and nobody's going to call you. So I think it's so important to teach people how to actually write the stuff. And when you understand how to write it, we've actually created a formula for this to teach you how to write your marketing. You can apply it to your business card, your website, your marketing ads, everything you do in marketing, and it's going to help you generate more business. So that is also coming out very soon. So hopefully those tips definitely helped.
Yeah, and that's the big reason why I wanted to show that, because all the REI Pro members already have it built in. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of it. All right, so the next question from David. I've taken your workshops before and I was very impressed. I am a cash buyer and I like to invest nationwide in emerging markets, so I'm always looking for wholesale deals. I have a few questions. What is your strategy of finding emerging markets? Money is cheap now, so if you have the investment capital but want to spread it out, what is your opinion of the best ratio of leveraged institutional financing to my own capital? How do I get on more buyers list? Thank you, David.
Yeah. Hey, David. Number one, thanks for your nice comment and submitting these questions. It's actually a very interesting question. I don't even know if any of my students have ever actually asked me this question before, because it's tough. So, emerging markets, number one, it's already hard to find. And it's funny, especially when you're looking from a nationwide standpoint. It's funny, as soon as you hear about it, it's like, oh, it's too late, right? So, it is difficult, but I do have a general rule. And my general rule of thumb, when you're looking for a market to do business in, now, if it's just like pre foreclosures or things of that nature, I mean, you could do that in every backyard in America. But if you're looking for something that's growing, so maybe you want to hold on to some things, here are the two things that I look for as kind of my starting point. Number one is I want you to list every single city in America that is the capital of the state. So that's first priority. Number two, does it have a major university in that city? And when you find that those two combinations together, that typically is going to be a much stronger marketplace for years to come. Some of those places, they don't just jump in values, but they steadily increase. And to me, that's kind of what you would look for from a nationwide standpoint. But I was thinking about, some of the things that have caught my eye in the past, and I wanted to just hopefully this might give you everybody some ideas. And I think that's what was important. So about 10 years ago, I learned that Southwest Airlines was going to start flying to Panama City, Florida. And I said, hey, that's going to be an emerging market, because if Southwest is going there, you're going to have a ton of people that are going to have nonstop flights to the beach. And it's a different kind of beach, a different community where they didn't have that really before. So I knew that that was going to be a market that could potentially increase. Another example was when Exxon put one of their big buildings in Spring, Texas. I knew from a corporate standpoint that Airbnbs would be very popular there because they bring in all these corporate people and they need housing. So I knew that was, a potential merging market. And then kind of the big question is, where's Amazon going? So Amazon always generates a lot of jobs, and typically that could help the economy, and the economy and the housing market almost go hand in hand. And so those are just some examples of real examples that I have seen in the past to try to predict, you know, where that emerging market's going to be. So hopefully that might get you to start brainstorming, just even your local area for everybody. Just think of those key points right there. Now, the second question was, how much capital do you borrow versus using your own cash? And this one's pretty simple to me because, as you already stated, money's very cheap right now. So I would be borrowing as much as you possibly can. And then I would use the cash for those, emergencies, number one. And number two, what about that one deal, that great deal that all of a sudden pops up that you need to act on very quickly? So I would borrow up to your borrowing power, which is going to be different for everybody. And then I would use your cash for the kind of that reserves, waiting for that home run deal, and or just kind of emergency fund. But like you said, money's cheap, and nothing beats cheap money. So I would get as much as you possibly can. Obviously, you need to invest it properly. It needs to go into the right deals, and the numbers have to be, they have to make sense. Be very cautious with your exit strategies. Make sure every deal you get into, there's probably multiple different ways you can get out of the deal. But other than that, cheap money is good. That was it.
All right, next question from Brandon Dukes. When you feel yourself getting overwhelmed with learning the different strategies and looking for leads, how do you keep yourself on track and organized?
Did you skip one?
I might have had. Let's see.
No. Okay.
Nope, not in the slide.
All right. So, number one, Brandon, thanks for sending in your question. The best thing you can do is learn one strategy. Everyone hears me talk about learn the multiple strategies and all those things, but focus maybe on one and get really good at it. And, when I started, my very first attempt to real estate investing was a lease option in Northern Virginia on a $450,000 townhouse. And I totally messed up that whole deal. I broke even on it, but I messed it all up. So when I moved to Texas, I just started wholesaling. I didn't even know if it was legal. And I did that literally for 12 months nonstop. And I got really good at it, really good. Then I transitioned into some of the other strategies. So I think from a long-term point of view, yes, you're going to learn all the strategies, but maybe just start with one. And as you're working one strategy, you'll probably run into people that say, hey, I would do a lease option on it. And if they say yes to a lease option or a seller finance, I would say it's like on the job training, right? So when it happens, now I'm going to go learn how to do it, right? So I would get really good at one, and then keep in mind, this is really a good point to make, Bo, because you know how everybody sits on the couch and like all they do is just they keep learning, but they never do anything?
Yeah.
I always say things always happen when you just get out into the marketplace. And what I mean by that is if I say, hey, I want to start with wholesaling, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to drive around, I'm going to learn things. Eventually, I'm going to find a deal. I'm going to put it under contract. I'm going to find an investor. Investor's going to talk to me about, hey, I know a contractor over here that does this and that. You're going to start meeting people. Things are just start to happen to evolve.
Yeah, you just
And
kind of have to
especially,
start taking
especially when it comes
action
to
and
a
getting
power
out there.
team. Go ahead.
I just said you just got to start taking action and get out there. It's amazing sometimes
Yeah.
when, I get overwhelmed in some of the things I do on a day-to-day basis, and I kind of just take a step back for a minute and I focus on that one thing. And as I start going down that one thing and get really good at it, other doors open up. So I think you're right on target there.
Yeah. And we did miss a
Yeah.
question here.
Well, I tell you what, I think I
It's
have
of
it here.
Walter.
I'll just leave this up and I'll read it. How's that sound?
Yeah, because I want you to answer this one because you're like, you did it. So,
It's kind of funny, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and just read it. The guy who asked the question was named Walter Scott, and he said, "Good evening. Can you market to banks/mortgage companies about possibly purchasing their REO assets?" Now, so the quick answer is sure you can. Now you can pull REI Pro or REO properties directly out of REI Pro's Lead Pro section, but now with this list, however, generally you're going to need to get with a realtor to communicate with the bank's agent, whoever's handling that property. So larger banks like a Wells Fargo, Bank of America, it's not like you can just simply walk into somebody's office, sit down, and talk to them about all their REO assets and just start trying to strike deals. They typically have brokers that are kind of handling this stuff, getting rid of these properties for them. But for smaller banks, sometimes they'll have what we call an acquisitions manager. And early in my investing career, we did just that. We walked into the bank, we sat down there locally with her and said, "This is what we're looking for." We looked at the entire portfolio, and next thing you know, we struck a deal with 50 of their bank owned properties. And that's kind of unheard of. A lot of you know that Chris was my coach back then, and that's what we did. He actually was there with me. We walked in, and he asked some crazy questions, and he just said, knowing that they're probably going to say no, and he wanted to know, "Hey, will you lease option these properties to us?" And she was like, "Sure." And I like to fell out of my chair there because I was like, okay, walking out the door going, "Okay, Chris, now we're going to do 50 properties on the lease option." So yes, you can talk to them, but the larger banks are going to be more difficult. You're going to need to get with a realtor to kind of work those.
yep.
Next question from Jonathan. I'm new. I'm a new virtual wholesaler. I recently started marketing and now I have several leads to follow up on. My question is about how your assignment of contract, step 5 in properties. Can you walk through the contract line by line with an example of filling it out? Also, how can we add contingencies in case we need to back out of the deal? And what are the typical contingencies? Thank you in advance.
Yeah. So, just for time's sake, I'm going to show you. We actually have a video that where I do go line by line in this. But if you wouldn't mind, just kind of going to the property, and this is also going to Jonathan, actually, his follow up question that we're going to get to is for step 6 as well. Um, so here are the contracts. So here's what we're talking about. So if you see the TV icon, if you click on the TV icon, I literally will walk you through line by line of every agreement that we have a TV icon for. Okay, the seller finance agreements are used for example purposes only. Again, you need an attorney with seller financing, but you can see the training videos there. And I'm going to walk you through line by line to tell you exactly the contingencies that you're talking about are already in the contract to purchase. So the very second one, if you download that contract, those 3 contingencies are already in there. So definitely want to go check that out because you're right. Anytime you sign a contract, I don't really care what deal it is, you need to have a way out of the deal in case something goes wrong. And those contingency clauses we already have in the contract. Now, these contracts are included with REI Pro. The only one that's not included with REI Pro is our lease option agreement. It's a one-time charge there. Once you do purchase that, you'll see the TV icon. You can download it. You could edit it. It'd be downloaded in a Word document. So that's where you're going to learn. Now, Bo, if you scroll down to number 6, step 6. So once we fill out the contract with the seller, we talk about using this affidavit. So part of his question is, could I go through this particular agree or paperwork line by line? Again, there's a training video there where I'm going to walk you through. This is actually very simple to do. So all you have to do is just click on that particular video. So I don't want to take everyone's time doing that when we already have it inside REIPro for you already. So in his next question, Bo, I kind of answered half of it.
Okay.
So if you go back to the PowerPoint, and the second part of this question, which is a great question, is as far as the affidavit, could I go through it line by line? But number one, being a virtual wholesaler, he has boots on the ground in other places. So how, if he's signing the contract, how does he actually file the affidavit? So all you have to do is get it notarized. You could get that notarized wherever, okay? You could then have whoever the boots on the ground go and file it for you. So that might be the easiest way to make sure that you are going through step number 6 of doing the deal. So it's as simple as that. So, and I believe he had the last question, so we could open it up to everybody else that's on here that wants to ask a question. And
Yeah, and please do me a favor and use the Q&A button. If you look at the little toolbar there at the bottom, should have a Q&A link. Click that and type your question in there. We do have some coming in. First one from Sean. I have a property located in New York State, which does closings with an attorney. However, on the contract, it states I will place the deposit with a title company of my choice. I plan on wholesaling and not buying, therefore I don't want an attorney charging me for holding the deposit, and the end buyer may want to do the closing with their own attorney. What do you suggest?
yeah, so this right here is actually a very simple answer. Number one, when you sign a contract with the owner, let's just say that you put in $500 and I want to close it with X person, attorney, title company, whoever it may be. Okay. You're not taking that contract to the title company or attorney until you actually get the buyer. Now, the new buyer is actually taking over your agreement that you have with the seller. So they have to abide by whatever you have in there. It's totally fine to change the title company or the attorney's closing attorney at that time. I highly doubt any seller's going to really care where you close it. Okay, so keep that in mind. I'm not signing a contract with the seller and then running down to the title company with a check for 500. Now, technically you should, but I don't do it. I'm going to go get my new buyer, assign it over, and then once I sign that assignment, I'm going to get a check from my new buyer, or the new buyer is then going to take the check down. At that moment of time, I'm taking both agreements down to the title company or closing attorney. At that time, they're going to request that earnest money that you put down, okay? And that can come from your new buyer, not necessarily you.
All right, next question from Alfred. Can you wholesale half of a duplex? I have one under contract and the buyers are a little hesitant.
No, you can't. A duplex is not sold in halves. It's sold as a whole, and you can't sell just half of it. You can't lease option half of it. You can't sell or finance half of it. You can't really do anything with half of it except live in it. Or you just rent both halves out. So you have to sell it because it's going to be deeded in one as one unit. And it's different than like a condominium where the unit itself has its own title and deed. So that could be sold individually without selling the entire condominium complex. Okay, but a duplex, you're not going to be able to do that.
Next question from Deborah. I am new to this. I have a sub 2 this weekend. What contract should I use? And I live in Missouri.
Well, number one, any seller finance agreement needs to go through an attorney because there's like 13 documents that you're going to need to fill out. So I would want my attorney to draw up any kind of seller finance. So a sub two is not, it's not an agreement, it's not a piece of paper, it's not a strategy. A lot of people get confused on exactly what sub two means. So it's nothing more than a clause that goes in a wraparound agreement when there's an existing mortgage. So if the seller has a mortgage on the property, you're always going to have that what's called subject to existing financing clause in a wraparound agreement. If the property is free and clear, you're not doing what's called a sub two. You wouldn't have a wraparound agreement because there would be no existing loan. So, number one, we really need to go to a real estate attorney that deals with seller financing to have them draw up all the agreements.
All right. Next question does not have a name, but I'm definitely intrigued by it because it says, "What's your advice for a beginner? I'm 22 years old, and over this pandemic, I've realized that the most reliable and sustainable sector is real estate in any economy. And right now, I'm just hungry for information. What did you do when you first began as an investor?"
You? You go first.
Well,
What'd
if
you
I
do,
had
Bo?
not, if I had not have lost my screen here and got me all confused. One second. So, what do we do when we first became an investor? Well, number one, I was either
How old were
going
you
to,
when you
what's
got
that?
started?
Huh?
How old were you when you got started?
Well, I started in 2007. How old was I back then? I don't
I was
really
just throwing
know,
you off there.
but I was in my 30s, not 22. So kudos to you for 22 getting started in this business. The earlier you start and the more you build your education, the more foundation you're going to have, the longer time you have to go out and be successful in this business. But, when I started, I immediately went out and hired a coach because I didn't want to make a bunch of mistakes. And I can tell you that be careful of all the people out there because there are some people who are really good and there's some people who look good on the surface and they're kind of shysters, and so you got to be real careful who you listen to, and there's a ton of information out there. But I felt like I was either going to make a bunch of mistakes or I was going and learn that way, and we didn't really have all this other stuff at the fingertips we do today. So I went out and hired a coach. Wasn't real good experience at first, but it did not let me stop because it was my passion. I really wanted to do real estate investing, and then that's when I met Chris. He helped me kind of put all the pieces back together and manage that situation. And I've been a successful investor ever since, and I never repeated those same problems. But one thing I can tell you, and at 22, a lot of people at 22 would be really scared or nervous about just getting out there and talking to sellers and go out there and do this. So and it doesn't matter if you're 22 or you're 52. A lot of people, what stops them is what's right here between their ears, and they're so scared of failing that they never actually take action. So what can you do as the beginning is educate yourself, whether you do what you're doing today, get an REIPro. Those are some great tools that are going to propel you forward, even as a beginner. It's got all the tools there for you to become a successful real estate investor. Plus, it has all the education for all the members there. If you need to take it further than that, and you feel like you need a little more accountability or education, look at hiring a coach to walk you through the process because that's going to be your fastest way to success. But I think the biggest piece is to take action and don't just sit on the couch and just sit there and surf YouTube all day long trying to, immerse everything and know every single piece of real estate investing before you get started. I think you're going to have to get off the couch and just go for it.
I was actually 24 when I got started, and as you can see, it's been a while. So I actually was just gonna say some of the things that you already said, but when I look back at being 24, I'm like, I don't know how the sellers actually believed what I was talking about because I didn't even know what the heck I was talking about when I got started. So Bo's right that it's a little bit different today because you have access to so much information, but that information could also be an overload. I think one thing that really kills people is the fear. They don't have enough confidence, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what we try to do here is to help build confidence by answering your questions and providing a great tool for you to really kind of cut through all the crap and really just kind of get to the nuts and bolts of what we're doing here, because it is a much needed service in the industry. As being an investor, we don't have to be labeled as this low-balling sleazy person that just tries to steal people's houses and stuff like that. Is totally false. And I think that confidence is the one thing that I had. Today people always go, yeah, but what if this happens? What if that happens? Yeah, but Chris, if you go down that road and this over here, what if that happens? And although you need to get answers to help build confidence, how many people, Bo, actually say, yeah, but what happens if I actually get rich? What happens if I actually make money? So they
Not
really
many.
never ask themselves those questions. It's always, yeah, but all they're doing is just standing in their own way. And I always say, what do you have to lose? There's not some real estate jail, right? So if you follow the steps in REIPro, which we have it outlined so beautifully, and you listen to the education, those two things combined, you will be 100 steps ahead of where I started. And I did 46 deals my first year, and now I've done over 500. So I think, you then go to the action piece, right, Bo, that you talked about is you just gotta go.
Gotta
What
go.
you gotta go. And for a lot of people, not the 22-year-old, but sometimes now I'm saying this to myself, you have a lot more years behind you than you do ahead of you. What are we waiting for? Why are we waiting? Why are we postponing success? Why are we, and I think the other piece to that, which I think was brought up last week, do it for somebody else. Do it for your child. Do it for your mom. Do it for your spouse. Do it for somebody else, because that's going to hold you accountable to actually pull the trigger and go do it. And you're never going to understand your full potential until you actually do it. And it may not be perfect the first time, but it's okay. I mean, I was doing deals and I didn't even know how the things were even being put together. I was just guessing. We didn't run comps. We didn't even fill out the contracts right. We didn't even have all the language that should have been in the contract like we do today. I think it's just a matter of having that self confidence, that knowing, yes, you're going to make a mistake. It's okay. We all make mistakes. It's If you can make more mistakes, you're going to be so much further ahead of most people that are scared to make that mistake. So
Well,
um, have
Chris,
confidence.
something that you said talking about that seems to be the most reliable, sustainable sector. You know, a lot of wealthy people have gotten very wealthy over doing real estate. But what that tells me, and I remember thinking about this in college. I'm not knocking college. I've got a degree in engineering. I love people going to college. I think college is still a wonderful thing. But when we go to college and we pick that path and we pick that degree, a lot of times it's really just teaching us how to go do a job for somebody else. And what real estate can do for you is provide that sustainable income over and over and over again as a completely different business without a job. And you're right, it doesn't really matter what the economy is doing. There's always going to be people needing to sell. There's always going to be people needing to buy, and it's just knowing the strategies to use in any situation. So,
Yep.
all right, Thaddeus says, hi, I'm a new investor. I've watched the lease option videos you have in the education tab of REI Pro. I'm kind of confused on when to do a sandwich lease and when to not. When is it good to do that?
99.9% of the time, you will do a sandwich lease. The only time you would not do it, okay? And for those of you not sure what we're talking about, go jump into the lease option series because it's a great strategy. It's one of my favorite strategies. But the only time you would not do a sandwich lease is when you can't make enough money in the cash flow part, or you can't make enough money on the sales price. And if your only profit center is going to be through the down payment, I would just assign it over, make a little bit of money, and move on to the next deal. but most of the time you're going to be doing a sandwich lease option.
Chuck says, what is a catchy phrase that I can use in my direct mail? I've sent out 15 letters a week and no calls.
Well, if you're working the lease option business, I've got a perfect one, actually. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
I will pay full price, guaranteed. Full
Try
price.
that one out and see if you get a call on that one.
Because if I do a lease option and I start getting calls, not that every deal I do I can or have to, but the ones that I'll use that marketing for, I'll give you full price, but I'm going to get the terms that I want. How much down, how much a month, and how long can I do it for? Okay, so that's a good catchy phrase, especially for creative financing.
Okay, next question from Gervin. Hey, Chris and Bo. First off, I want to say thank you for taking the time to read my question. I'm just getting started in real estate, and with the market that I'm currently in, I have to either do seller financing or lease options. I know how important it is to build a relationship with a seller when doing an inspection, but I don't have a car yet. Is it okay to go to the house and lift? Will that make a bad first impression or cost me the deal?
You just say it's your limo driver, right?
That's right.
You
Heck,
know, let me tell you a quick story. So one of my students, when I was living in Austin, he came over. He was 21 years old, and he came over, flew by himself from England, and he rented a room in the back of this printing company. It's he rented a small room, and his very first deal, he had to walk the neighborhoods. And the very first deal, he made 5 grand by walking the neighborhoods. Believe that or not. And I was like, that's dedication right there. So, yeah, obviously it makes it more difficult if you don't have a vehicle, but who cares? Don't worry about those small things. Just show up in an Uber. Who cares? Call the Uber. Check out the area. When you're done looking at the property, just say, hey, I'm going to go check out the area. Hey, if I had a friend drop me off, whatever it may be, I wouldn't focus too much on it. I hear what you're saying is, well, if you don't have a car, how are you going to buy my house? Right. So, let's go do the first deal and then you go get a car, so it's just one of those things that you maneuver and you work around, but don't let it hold you back.
Absolutely. Julia, what do we do after they sign the contract? Have the notary there to witness them signing, then bring it to escrow?
Um, well, what strategy are we talking about? Number one, if it's like a wholesale deal, any of the contracts, you don't have to have the seller notarize the contract, period. Okay. So once you get the contract signed, you're going to simply move to executable step number 6. So that was number 5, and go to number 6. We want to keep this so simple, so simple. When you go through the executable steps, you are literally following exactly what you need to do. And it is a tremendous formula because it's exactly how I name it, is executable. It's the physical things you have to do in a specific order to make something happen. So after you sign the contract, go to step 6. What does it say? File the affidavit. That's where you would get that notarized, but you don't need the seller to sign it. And then file that down. Okay, what's the next step? Go to step 7. And if you follow those steps, you're going to make money. I mean, I've been teaching those steps for 10 or 12 years now. I was actually sitting in the back of a room when we were doing an event, and I was literally thinking about what are those things that what are the steps we do in an order? Like what order? You hear somebody, hey, just go find a deal, just make the offer. Yeah, but how do you connect all the dots and stuff? And it was confusing for people. And I was like, yeah, it was confusing for me too. That's probably why it took me like 5 years before I really got good at it. But I started to write down, what do we do? And I wrote them in this order. And that's how actually REIPro was founded, on those 10 steps. So if you follow those steps, especially a beginner, it's a home run.
Sorry, I was just switching to the last slide questions. Some people were confused because they couldn't see the questions that I'm reading. These are the live Q&As that are coming in. So if you have a question, type it in the live Q&A panel. All right, the next
Slacking.
question from um, Hannah, can I change the title company after the contract has been signed?
Yeah, I would. I would just tell the seller you're changing title companies. Like I said before, most sellers are not going to care at all. And it's technically, it's not even really required. It's just you don't want to give the earnest money to the seller. So we put it in the contract so they can see that it's going somewhere, a third party that's going to manage the closing side of it. But you can change the closing. I've done it numerous times.
Anthony, how do I sell or finance a deal that I'm acquiring on a wholesale agreement?
Hold on, let me think about that one.
Yeah, like, how do I sell or finance a deal that I'm acquiring on a wholesale agreement?
Well, you can't.
You can't.
That's why. Not even possible.
Tawanda, I'm interested in flipping properties. How do I find the areas where these properties are located?
Hold on. Let me go back to the other question. Maybe this is where you were going with that. You could put it under a seller finance agreement, like the one page with the addendum, and then assign the seller finance, but you can't put it under contract to buy paid cash or in full and then turn around and do terms. So maybe that was a better answer.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that last one?
Yeah. So, okay, the last one was from Tawanda. She's interested in flipping properties, but how does she go about finding those areas where those properties are located? Good areas for flipping properties.
Well, number one, take the medium price range.
Mhm.
Okay, that's going to be your ideal market. When you think of wherever you live, find okay, where's the middle price range, and Zillow is actually a good place for that because you can go and actually look at the map and start seeing the houses for sale. Not that you're looking for those houses, but it's telling you what things are basically worth. And you're finding those specific neighborhoods that have around that middle price point. That is ideal for wholesaling, lease options, fix and flip, as you're talking about, seller financing, and so on.
All right. I don't have a name here, but I've been doing some skip tracing for possible sellers, but the numbers are coming back invalid. Is there a better way to contact the seller with the information provided?
That's your question.
Well, I don't even know if they're talking about using our skip trace because I think, ours is one of the best out there. They didn't really specify. But as far as finding other sellers, if it's in your neighborhood, like I did one, I couldn't even find it in the skip trace. And so I just went and knocked on the neighbor's door to find the seller because the house was vacant. So it depends on, you're going to have to just get creative. If you can't find it by phone, you may have to mail a piece of direct mail to them because to contact the seller, we have a few ways to do that. We can either pick up the phone or call them, or we can mail them a piece of information, or we can go talk to a neighbor. So we're going to use one of those three strategies to get a hold of the seller.
Yeah, and if you're doing skip tracing through us, then you have the next of kin and all the nearest relatives included. So
Yeah,
that's who I would reach out to.
exactly. Okay, so next question from Glenn. How much should I pay a realtor for their help on a lease option deal? And how do I pick a good attorney to look over my contracts? And what should I look for?
Number one, you can't pay a realtor. It's against the law. Only realtors can pay other realtors, but you can't say, "Hey, I'm going to pay you $500 for sending me a buyer, sending me a seller, whatever it may be." So legally, you really can't pay them. All you can do is work the deal to where maybe they would get a commission when the new buyer buys. So make sure you're not paying the realtor. They have they're the ones that are going to get in trouble. Let me just say that because when you're a realtor, and we have a ton of realtors in our system, but they have to follow all the rules, all the regulations that the state and the Realtor board has to follow. They have to follow all those. Us as investors, we don't play the same game, so we don't follow their rules. Okay. And you can't pay a finder's fee. You can't write them a check for helping you do something. The only legal way for you to pay them is to structure them in the deal to where they could receive a commission or even a possible reduced commission up front. And the second part to that was, how do you find a good, was it real estate attorney?
How to pick a good attorney, to look over his contracts and what should you be looking for, probably in the attorney.
Yeah. So number one, here's the most important question to ask any attorney. Number one, ask them if they've ever done it before. Have you ever done a lease option contract before? Are you familiar with that? Have you ever done a seller finance agreement? Are you familiar with that? I think when you ask them those questions, don't think that real estate attorney just, they know what you're talking about, because that's why we call it creative financing. It's not normal. It's not traditional. It's creative. So not every attorney is going to understand what you're talking about. And the hard lesson learned, because I've done it numerous times, is the attorney will say, oh, yeah, I've done it before. And then they send me this enormous bill. And you know what I did? I ended up paying for his education because he had to go research how to actually do it. Okay. So now I get to the point, hey, do you know how to do this? How many of these have you actually done? So, but local
Well,
REIAs are going to help out big time with
yeah.
finding the right attorney outside of Googling it.
Yeah. Julia, do you have any training on marketing to sellers?
It's coming. We're I'm not going to talk about where to market because there's really only a few places kind of to market. But when we talk about just marketing in general, I'm going to teach you a formula. Outside of that, direct mail is going to be one of the biggest ways that most investors are going to do it. And I mean, outside of that, driving neighborhoods and things of that nature and doing, when we talk about marketing, I know, Bo, this question earlier, the marketing is the same for every single business on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no like miracle thing that we do in marketing, right? To find sellers, buyers, investors, hard money, whatever it may be. Every business has the same opportunity to market the exact same way. I'm always a big person on what are we saying versus where are we marketing, because where we're marketing is the same as everyone else.
Well, and if you've done any kind of Google AdWords advertising, when you're writing your ads, the very first thing that they're going to want you to do is write multiple ads, because they want you to pick, and their system will automatically show which ad is getting more clicks. Well, to them, and their metric is, oh, that's a better written ad. It's getting more clicks. So you're always wanting to write better marketing. And if you pick one, oh, that's the best one, now you want to try to write another one to beat that one. So what is that telling you? It's what you say in the marketing that's getting the result that you're trying to get to. It's not where we're putting, that particular ad or marketing.
Right.
Okay, so Sandra, what is the best way to collect a tenant buyer's option consideration when doing a lease option deal virtually? Do you have the buyer wire the money to your escrow company? And if you aren't able to collect their payment in person?
Yeah, you could, I mean, they could obviously send you a cashier's check or they could wire the money. I would go with the wiring when you're doing it virtually. Um, Most of the time you're going to probably do it in person, but if you have to do it virtually, I would do a bank wire on that
Yeah,
one.
but if this is going to be a lease option,
It needs to go to you.
Escrow involved. You just work directly.
Yeah. Don't worry about the escrow. We talk about escrow companies because everyone's like, yeah, but what happens if the seller does this and they stop making payments? This is very rare that would ever happen. And so I want the money. I don't, that's my first profit center. So I'm not sending it to anybody else. If the seller is in that, well, or you don't trust the seller that they're going to make the payment. Generally, that doesn't happen because we don't do lease options typically on those types of properties. But yes, you could set up an escrow account, but then you're going to be paying more money. I've never used an escrow company on a lease option
Yeah,
ever.
and keep in mind
But I
that
teach people they go
that you
get
can't.
one
Yeah,
if you feel the seller's going to, stop making payments to the bank and it could foreclose or something like. So if you feel wish-washy, it is an option. I've just never have done one.
well, Chris,
Never.
keep in mind, what they're saying here too is it's the option consideration money that they're talking about having wired, and that is your first profit center. So you're really
Yeah.
not going with that to an escrow. That's a non-refundable amount. It's yours to keep, even if they don't exercise the right to buy.
Well, the
So
escrow
it's
company
yours.
could pay the seller the difference. If you have to pay the seller 2,000 and your new buyer's paying you 10,000, you could run that through
Good.
the escrow and then the escrow is going to pay you the difference. But I want that money in my bank account. So
Exactly. Thaddeus, what are your marketing strategies for lease options for the lease option strategy? Do you do more cold calls, mailing campaigns, or emails?
the first two, that's it.
Yep.
Direct
Get a phone.
mail, phone calls. Those are going to be your best ways to email. You got to be careful with emails as we go to a black screen. You have to be very careful. You're on your desktop, I think.
I know. I'm gonna get it back for all y'all out there. Let's see.
And just think, he's the programmer.
Hmm.
Um,
Mouse is
so,
sensitive.
so yeah, direct mail is really in direct mail. I would be targeting the absentee owners, number one, because a lot of absentee owners may be renting their property, so they're already willing to accept a monthly payment. Now it's just a matter of, do you want to eventually sell? So I would be direct mail marketing absentee owners.
All right, Joanna, what is your daily recommended activities for finding deals?
Direct mail, and here are two of my favorites. It doesn't make them any better or worse than all the ways that you could find deals. Is direct mail, phone calls, those two that we just talked about. And I love driving the neighborhoods. See, to me, it's like I want to find that next treasure. And I always love finding those hidden opportunities out there, but you got to get out into the market in order to see it.
All right, next question from Thomas. Signing contracts online. Which signing service would you recommend? I saw a service where you need two emails when there are two people. For me, I do it all the time. Whether it's a lease option, it's a rental agreement. I've used HelloSign. I've used them for years. It's very simple to upload the Word or the PDF document. You go in there and then you put the little boxes where everybody needs to initial, sign, and date, and then you just put their name and their email. It sends it out for the signatures. It lets you know when everybody's signed. It sends the electronic copies, and it's a legal binding one of those services. So that's who I've used. I know there's a lot of others out there, but that's one I know off the top of my head.
Yeah. DocuSign.
DocuSign's another one. I liked HelloSign because it was free and allowed me to do like 7 signs a month or 2 a month for free. um, Gervin, I really want to find a mentor, but I know I can't just wave an investor down and ask them, and they waste their time on teaching me when they could have used that time to make money. I can give them leads in exchange, but that's the best way for me to find. Is that the best way for me to find a mentor?
Well, we do coaching for a limited amount of people. Number one, to me, that is the fastest way, um, because it's just the experience. It's as
Mhm.
how we're answering these questions. It's just you. To me, real estate is you either know it or you don't, right? And I don't think there's a gray area. So, you know, getting a coach is not just teaching you what to do. It's how to maneuver through the deal. It's how to hold you accountable. It's how to motivate you. There's so many different things that come along with it. Real estate investing is not something that, it's like a plug and play type of thing. Like, we're dealing with human beings. All right. So, and that's not always easy for people. It's you think about how many people just struggle. It's like, I'm not picking up the phone. What happens if they say yes? They get so scared, but I don't even know what I'm saying. But if you're interested in learning more about our coaching, you can email us at coaching@myreipro.com.
And the last question right now is from Baba. My name is
Yeah,
Baba,
we're at an
new
hour too.
investor and interested in flipping DC and Maryland. I need help in getting deals or networking with wholesalers. Better put, how can I better use the REIPro website? I am a cash buyer. Thanks in advance.
Are you looking for people to find the deals for you, or are you looking to do it yourself? Because if you're going to do it yourself, direct mail is going to be number one. You can get so much out, it's inexpensive, and do mass mailings. If you're looking for people to actually find the deals, I'm sure there may be people on this call right now, but one way you could do it is to join a local RIA. And you're going to find so many people there that are looking for people like you. And those two ways, if you're looking to do it yourself or you're looking for people to help you do it, or a combination of the two, those would be the answers.
Yep. Well, that
That's
is
it. We're
all.
good.
We are good. That's all the live questions.
Awesome. Again, if you're not familiar with REI Pro, go check us out. myreipro.com. You can see at the bottom of your slide there. And thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the questions. And we do this just about every week. So take advantage of it. So many people do not take advantage of this, and it blows my mind actually, because you're going to learn so much, and people are asking questions that you may not even have thought of until they ask the question. So it's like your education is number one priority. I mean, knowledge is going to fix so many things.
Yeah, and if you
And
got friends out there doing the stuff, look, tell them to get involved with REI Pro. Tell them to join these webinars and these training sessions, because it's really, this is what it's all about. It's education. It's coming together. It's learning from each other when we're able to do this. Because I guarantee you, if you ask that question, there's probably 10 more people that have that exact same question. So tell people to join in and join in the conversation.
absolutely, I don't know of anybody else that's even doing it. So we want our people to succeed and do well at this and teach you the right way. I think that's really the key. I understand why a lot of people don't do these types of training, especially with the software. It's because most of them have never been in real estate. You have two guys with all this experience. We are investors that built this system, so we know how people think. In time, yeah, there's always something, with software. Bo has always told me, he's like, it's a living, breathing thing. It never ends. There's always something more you could always put into it. But
Absolutely.
I want to challenge every one of you to put everything you have in you to go make that first phone call, get in your car, drive that neighborhood, challenge yourself to take action. Okay, because you're never ever going to have everything perfect in front of you, ever, because it's always going to change.
And if you feel like
So
you got to have it perfect, that's going to hold you back. Change the
have
mindset.
a absolutely have a wonderful Friday. Have a great weekend, and I am super pumped up for this weekend because SEC football is back. My team is Texas A&M.
My team is
Bo's team is
Auburn.
Auburn, and we actually play each other on the last game, I believe. So I'm excited about that. Everyone enjoy the weekend. Thanks so much, and
Stay safe.
our customer service is available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Eastern time if you have any questions. But as far as real estate, thank you. Submit your questions for next week as soon as we post it tomorrow, and keep your eye out for the last episode of our wholesaling training. And have a good night.